Okay. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Donald Trump, the most LGBT-friendly president in American history. It is technically true that Donald Trump is the only president in American history. During the entirety of his term, gay marriage has been legal. That is true. Don't know how much that has to do with him being a progressive, though, because Donald Trump has taken shots at the LGBT community quite a few times. From the banning trans people from the military for no fucking reason, to asking the Supreme Court if it would be possible to prevent gay couples from adopting, to stealthily removing LGBT medical rights. Well, 4 days ago, the Trump administration again weakens LGBT protections while everybody's busy with the Capitol being stormed. With less than 2 weeks left in office, the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump has finalized yet another rule rolling back non-discrimination protections for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people seeking the services of health and welfare programs funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Previously, a federal regulation expressly prohibited health and welfare programs receiving federal funding from discriminating on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. But the administration's new rule, first proposed in 2019, erases this language. It also deletes a requirement that recipients recognize the marriages of same-sex couples, replacing it with a generic statement that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services will respect Supreme Court decisions. Nice! So the clause that previously existed was, hey, don't discriminate against gay people, please. And then he just erases it for no reason. No reason given, by the way. No reason given. No benefit. That's the real key thing here. There's no benefit. The suffering is the point. Remember when they put out that law and now like homeless shelters can discriminate against trans people? That was a couple years ago. Do you remember that? A year and a half ago? The cruelty is the point. There's no benefit to this, like none whatsoever. It's not being recommended by any medical professionals. It doesn't save money. It just nothing. It just does nothing good. It exclusively serves the purpose of making life harder for LGBT people. That's it. That's the only benefit. I'm sure that as we speak, Blair White is typing a post-millennial article about how this isn't actually anti-LGBT the way the fake mainstream media says it is. It's probably the 15th such article that she's had to write over the past 4 years. But the previous regulation was used to ensure adoption and foster care agencies who receive federal support served all qualified parents, including same-sex couples. Rolling back existing non-discrimination protections will harm those families, as well as the many kids awaiting placement in loving and supportive homes. I just don't know how evil you have to be to, like, think. You have 2 weeks left in office. You're responsible for orchestrating an attack on the U.S. Capitol. You're despised, and your own party has turned its back on you. What do you do with your very little remaining time? What if we made it harder for orphaned children to go to loving homes of same-sex couples? What if we just made life slightly worse for a minority group to no other benefit? At least if it was like defunding federal programs for affirmative action, you could make some argument that he's pulling money elsewhere or that it was discriminatory to begin with. But in this case, he's promoting the discriminatory action. This isn't even an anti-affirmative action position. This is an anti-equality position. Do you think Biden will reverse this ASAP? I don't know. Can Biden reverse this at all? Should be able to. This didn't get passed through Congress, so I imagine that it's done through the executive branch. I imagine he would have the power to do that. In the coming weeks, Congress should swiftly reject this regressive rule. The Congressional Review Act allows Congress to disapprove of a recently enacted regulation, and with the president's signature, prevent it from taking effect. Wait, if it requires the president's signature, how effective is that? If it's trying to disapprove of presidential regulation, but it needs the president's signature. Okay. Well, the president will be Biden soon anyway. With an upcoming presidential transition, the U.S. government should take this opportunity to make it clear that programs it funds are open to all qualified people, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Yeah, that's kind of a weird way of disapproving of recently enacted regulation, but okay. Yeah, like, put simply, there's a myth that I believed in for a while, And the myth was that social progress is basically something we can take for granted. That given enough time, you have slavery and sharecropping, Jim Crow laws, and you have the civil rights movement, you have Stonewall, and you have gay marriage being legalized, blah, blah, blah. Slowly over time, things move upwards. But there are sometimes very radical, very sharp drops. I am reminded of the Weimar Republic, which was actually one of the most progressive places in Europe back before the Nazis took power. And after the Nazis did take power, in addition to them, hold your shock, revoking civil rights for a lot of groups of people, they also did a lot of book burning. A great deal of the pre-World War II literature we had about transgender and gender non-conforming people, I'm sure back then they were called, like, transvestites or whatever. But the fundamental research was burned because it was degenerate and Jewish. So they burned it. They burned quite a bit of it. Of course, the internet wasn't around back then, so you burn the books, and there it goes. Stuff like that can happen. They were called changey-wangies. Yeah, that was the official European nomenclature for what we now know as transgender individuals. Were changey-wangies. But the point I'm getting at, though, is, like, I think that if Shuanhead's still in chat, I'm sure Shuanhead can attest to this. There were a lot of people who felt that the claims that Donald Trump would be, like, anti-civil rights were really overblown, that he was just kind of like a loud, bombastic, antagonistic, anti-establishment candidate who maybe wasn't super progressive, but, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, like, there's really no reason that, like... regulation like this would ever be passed unless you were trying to appeal to some underlying animus, And what has Donald Trump done during his presidency? He spent the past 4 years essentially fighting, like, a race war that's really escalated in the past 6 months. Really, really, like, rocketed up there. Whether it's, the xenophobic attacks against Chinese Americans or Hispanic people coming up from the border and his constant claims that the whole world is going to be, fucking... smothered in MS-13 aliens unless we do something about it, to the BLM stuff, to Kaepernick and blah, blah, blah. His whole presidency has been anti-civil rights presidency. And every once in a while, he does manage to actually push in that direction. From the multiple attacks on trans people and the revocations of healthcare rights for LGBT people. By the way, when I say rights here, I don't mean preferential treatment. I mean equal treatment. A lot of conservatives will say, like, conservatives are for equality, whereas liberals are for pushing the black trans people ahead. No, in this case, Donald Trump is just revoking the equality bit. For no reason other than to cause suffering in these groups of people. We have all of that. And, and he's talked about revoking the ability for same-sex couples to adopt. And we have 2 Supreme Court justices who have even talked about revoking the right to same-sex marriage, or that they disagreed with that decision and that they think it should be overturned, or that a future case might give them an opportunity to do so. This has been a very deeply anti-civil rights administration. If there's anything I want to harp on, it's this. It sounds dumb, it sounds simple, but I want to harp on this. Don't take any civil progress for granted, okay? Never ever think, oh, we got that benefit, we're fine. Things can ramp down really quickly. Now, thankfully, it is harder to push back against social progress once that progress has already been made. We're probably not going to get a presidential candidate who's going to make the number of Americans who disagree with interracial marriage, like, expand like 10 times. That's probably not going to happen. But there are marginal issues, especially along the lines of legislation and regulation, stuff Americans don't pay much attention to, where you can make life a lot harder for many groups of people. We're still dealing with racial justice. Like, the practical consequences of redlining are today just as severe as they were in the 1950s, even though redlining has been made illegal. There are still very basic civil rights issues in this country that we have not addressed. The sad thing is, unless they go addressed, all the fundamental problems we see aren't going to go away. With trans suicide rates, or with the black-white crime or income gap. These are sociological problems. They can be fixed with fairly deliberate changes to our culture and to our legal system, but we don't. And as long as we don't, these problems are going to persist, at least with the case of the racial gaps. Trans acceptance is largely a cultural thing, and it's getting better pretty quickly. To be fair, when it comes to trans acceptance, 10 years ago, people didn't know what the fuck a transgender person was. Let's be fucking real, okay? 10 years ago. A lot of people forget how rapidly the social acceptance has, like, rocketed up. Now, it's true that if you're in the Bible Belt, that change probably hasn't been felt, but, the difference is 10 years ago, most people didn't know what, like, trans people were. They just had, like, a vague understanding of, like, a cross-dresser, or maybe they've seen, they've seen what's the Hannibal Lecter movie? Silence of the Lambs. You know, they've seen that and they think like, oh, that thing. And now, understandings of like pronoun usage and not gender fluidity, but non-binary people. I mean, these things are like way, way more broadly accepted in such a short span of time than I ever would have expected. So that's awesome. But take income gap between black and white people, you take that issue, that will literally never go away unless we do something to fix it. Like, injuries don't go away until they're treated. Time won't just balance it out. It's not possible. Something needs to be done to fix the problem. I just imagine it's like 2172, and all the right-leaning people in America, assuming we're still around at that point, are like, so we gave the blacks civil rights like 200 years ago, and they're still like poorer than us. Must be brain size. And we just haven't fixed the baseline problem, you know? We haven't fixed the underlying issue there. So hopefully we get around that. You know, fulfill the vision of Lyndon B. Johnson. Go further than he ever expected. That Great Society program. We can only hope. Yeah, we can only hope.